the seasonality of our client presence dramatically impacts the way that I can price my business and extract dollars from people. And that kind of catches people by surprise where they're like, well, why don't you practice what you preach? I say, it's because I can't. In a perfect world, I would charge them the way Mark does, but I don't have that kind of flexibility. And most performance training gyms don't if they have any semblance of a niche, because you can't, I mean, sports performance in and of itself, I guess, is a big, vague niche. But I mean, is there a sport that you're known for catering to? If so, you're subject to their competitive calendar, and that's going to totally dictate how and when you earn your money as a gym owner.
Pete, how we doing?
I'm doing well. Summer's gone fast, way too fast, but otherwise good. How about you?
I'm great. I mean, this is, speaking of summer, this is so far ahead from now. This is going to be in the future. And if the marketing calendar is not lying to me, this is an auspicious day because we are at the end of the early bird period for people that are considering joining us in Denver, where you can still save $100 off the full price of the ticket. I think as long-term listeners know, we always have a handful of non-member seats at our member retreats. This next one is happening in Denver. We have a lot of great talks lined up. The topic is people and operations. And yeah, we'd love to see you there. So if you're interested in joining us, you've been thinking about it, now's the time to do it. Let's jump on in, get the plane ticket while it's cheap, and save money on that ticket.
Yeah, let me make another compelling pitch that, believe it or not, I haven't told you this, got my wife across the finish line and joining me in Denver. And I said to her last night, I was sitting on the couch, I was like, I haven't booked my flights for Denver yet, but what if I told you on the day that I'm supposed to get out there, Bonnie Raitt is playing Red Rocks? And she's like, I don't even care, I'm in. Let's do it. Because she loves that venue and she loves Bonnie Raitt. I could take it or leave it. Amazing. I'm not hating on Bonnie Raitt, but it's just not my music. But my wife was like, done, I'm in. Let's go book our flights. And I said, well, we don't know who's watching our kids. She's like, we'll figure it out. So meet us at Red Rocks.
Yeah, it is. I actually haven't spent a lot of time in Denver. And my understanding, too, this is September 26th, 27th. My understanding that is peak weather in Denver. So we hope to see you there. But today we want to talk a little bit about sports performance gyms. And I'm excited because this is a topic that Pete brought up, and it's something I said that I want to have a chance to ask him some questions about. So Pete, do you want to sort of tee up today's conversation?
Yeah, I get a lot of questions from new entrants to Unicorn Society about how in the hell did you partner up with Mark and Michael? People are often very confused because I would say forward facing, like as far as the internet version of ourselves go, we seem really, really different. You know, I run a kind of big locker room setting, jock alpha culture space. And you run pretty much the opposite of that for a good decade there. Same. And the thing I say to everybody is that we have a lot more in common than we have different in how we run our operations. But that always gets me to thinking, what are the biggest misconceptions people have about running a performance training gym? Because there are a lot more Gen Pop gyms or studios or, fitness providers who help the average adult male or female than there are performance training facilities. And so I have come across a fair amount of pretty consistent assumptions that are inaccurate about our operations as like performance gym owners. And then there's some things that just can't fail. We run them the same way across your gym, my gym, and any gym with a coach. So I thought that could be a good conversation.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm curious. Maybe we can dive right in here. Yeah, what do you think are the most common misperceptions that people have about sports performance gyms? And just so I'm clear here too, Pete, is this misperceptions that you find when you're talking to new clients about the ways they should be running the gym?
This is more internal in Unicorn Society. So fellow gym owners, because we talk to a lot of them. Mm-hmm. There are people, for example, I'll give you an example. We advocate on, 12-month contracts, and we want people to bill weekly or biweekly. And we want to make that as standardized and consistent and predictable from a revenue stream standpoint as possible. And sure, I love that. That sounds great. I want to tell everyone to do that. But in performance training gyms, I mean, as I was talking to my business partner, John, about this before we recorded, he's like, we have clients who disappear for 8 consecutive months, and we don't
Yes.
consider them attrition issues. We
Yep.
consider them temporarily inactive active clients, if that makes
Yes.
sense. And
Yes.
I
Yes.
can't build a pricing model around that where I'm pinging their card every week, other week, or even month.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so the seasonality of our client presence dramatically impacts the way that I can price my business and extract dollars from people. And that kind of catches people by surprise where they're like, well, why don't you practice what you preach? I say, it's because I can't. In a perfect world, I would charge them the way Mark does, but I don't have that kind of flexibility. And most performance training gyms don't if they have any semblance of a niche, because you
Yes.
can't, I mean, sports performance in and of itself, I guess, is a big, vague niche. But I mean, is there a sport that you're known for catering to? If so,
Hmm.
you're subject to their competitive calendar, and that's going to totally dictate how and when you earn your money as a gym owner.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for what it's worth too, for people listening, like, I don't know, in 2025, and I don't know actually that we have like this is like the Biz Unicorns company line on this. I'll say, speaking for myself, I mean, I tend to prefer like a cancel any time these days for a lot of people. I just think it's a new world, and people really value that flexibility, and that maps a little bit more easily to the seasonality of a sports performance business. But it is true, and that is something that, you know, when I'm talking to people that have sports performance gyms, that is a different challenge compared to Gen Pop. Now, Gen Pop, you have seasonality, which is a very stupid term, but in practice, at the time of this recording, like most gyms in the northern parts of the United States certainly are going to be like a little bit lighter in August. People are going to be busy. We know gyms tend to be a little bit lighter at the end of November into December. They tend to be a little bit lighter into March. So you're going to have some ebbs and flows, but that is very different than, I think, the built-in seasonality for sports performance gyms. So I'm curious, Pete, like, how do you recommend that the typical sports performance gym owner thinks about this? Because you're right, like a lot of our like models for what should be happening every month, it's just going to be like spikier. So I'm just curious how you counsel people to think about their monthly revenues and how to be prepared for that spikiness.
I think you separate yourself from the concept of recurring revenue, because that's where you take some pretty big kicks in the teeth if you're attached to the idea of staying consistent, say,
Yep.
I don't know, March, April, May in my space
Yep.
specifically. So I treat the year, we follow the academic calendar and how we think fiscally about our year. So summer is very profitable for us. The first semester, or the pre-Christmas window of a academic year, is very good. It's like a build all the way up until the end of December. And then that's like the peak of the pyramid. Like we start our descent around January 10th because all of our college guys start leaving. So I don't evaluate say Q1 against my Q2 performance, because they're night and day. They really just
Yep.
they don't match. So
Yep.
I have to kind of mentally, every time I look at my benchmarks, I'm measuring against the matching quarter from the year prior, not my last
Yeah, I
quarter.
was going to say, I assume you're playing a year-over-year game.
Exactly. So, and I do follow the same goals and objectives though. Like I'm definitely chasing manageable active client growth at the
Right.
start and end of those seasons, and I want to measure kind of performance. We're so far in that it's amazing how consistent it is. Like
Yeah, for
John
sure.
John ran me through. He's kind of building out his own CRM right now because he wants to be a little bit more thorough in how we track leads through our space than we currently are. And he walked me through it, and he's like, it's alarming how consistent we are active client wise year over year, despite there's a surprising
Yeah.
amount of churn, but we might be 260 active clients last year and 262 this year on the same day.
Right.
And
Right.
it's
Right.
it's
Right. Right.
wild how consistent that is all the time.
Yeah.
And the growth thing, I don't know. They're like, you get old enough, mature enough as a business, you just don't have any like 10% growth months. It just doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. At a certain point. Yeah. At a certain point, you're going to. You're going to reach a level of maturity.
I have a
At
wild
least
amount
for
of
brick and
anxiety
mortar
about that
gyms. When we start our AI startup, Pete, that'll be different. We're going to be 10%
though.
month growth for the decade until the robot gods are here.
Until we have the whole entire planet training in our gym, and I look forward to that day. But
Yes. Yes. Billion-dollar gym. Billion-dollar gym. Your $1 million gym. Lame. $1 billion gyms are cool.
yeah, they're just around the corner.
So many, I'm sure.
I think that the lesson I'm learning again and again is we kind of need to stop comparing ourselves to each other as well, because I have these moments where you guys will put up like a win on the kind of on our Slack thread internally, client wins, and it'll be like, so,
No, and you're like,
it'll
oh,
be like so and so's up 46% year over year in revenues, and I'm like, f that guy.
yeah,
That's,
yeah, yeah,
that's a
yeah,
$500,000.
yeah. That's
We do this. Like,
yeah,
what are we
yeah, yeah,
doing?
yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah,
I
totally.
have to talk myself back on that all the time. Like I'm playing my own game. I'm competing with
Yep,
myself.
yep,
So every gym owner who's listening, you're not competing with CSP numbers or MFF numbers or MBSC or
yep,
whoever. You're competing with yourself at the very most a year ago today. And I just
yeah.
kind of live in that bubble.
I think that's true. You know, it almost opens up. We probably won't do this because this will make ours too complex. And simplicity is a value of business for unicorns, a hard fought value that we fight for every day.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, one could almost see a world where you almost create a different model of like a growth stage business versus a mature business. And you see some people, and I've been working on something like this that's not ready for prime time yet, but you know, putting my own thoughts on paper for the various pain points and priorities for gyms at various revenue and client growth phases. But it's probably there probably could be more made about the differences between a gym that is really mature and really truly nearing something of a capacity, right? Because in practice, there is such a thing as nearing as capacity. It's such rare air that we virtually never talk about because in practice, when we talk to most gym owners, usually there's a decent amount of meat on the bone, more or less. But there is a world where like you're kind of at where you're going to be, right? I think another example of this, not in sports performance world, but you know, my gym in New Jersey, the 6-on-1 model is kind of designed for 130 to 150 clients.
Yep.
Like that's it. Like, you can't have 200 people in there. Just it doesn't work. You only have so many hours per day in a small square footage. At a certain point, if you want further growth, and that's of course when we roll people in the Leadership Society, which is as good a time to say any. If you're listening and you're a B4U super fan, and we do have a program we don't talk about a ton called the Leadership Society, which is for more advanced gym owners. Fair warning, there are certain net income requirements and certain tenureship of gym ownership because it's a non-newbie space for it's a non-newbie space is what I'll say there. So if you want to learn more about that, email me, mark@businessforunicorns.com. But all that to say, yeah, there is a certain point where the gym is nearing maturity and you're not expecting those sort of big swings. I have maybe another question for you, Pete, that I'm curious if you could speak to a little bit. So we just redid the Raise Your Rates playbook.
Yep.
And by the way, if you go to businessunicorns.com, you can find it there. There were a number of, I think, very important updates. I'll probably talk about that in a podcast soon because there were some things I could see people were getting confused about. But one of the things I updated were the numbers for average revenue per month. Now, you know, admittedly, this is a little bit subjective, but in general, if I'm looking at, say, a 6-on-1 small group gym, almost anywhere in America, even in a rural market, I'm looking for an average monthly revenue of maybe $320-ish per month, which is a little bit up from last time we did it. If you have a higher volume, large group model with ideally at least 15 and ideally 20 or more people per session, some of our clients run that play. Even there, I'm looking for at least 185 on average per revenue per month. And in case you're curious how we got to those numbers, I mean, listen, it's a little bit art as well as science, but looking at a lot of P&Ls and just simply doing the math of knowing a small group gym is going to be probably, again, 100 to 150 clients. That larger group model could bear more. Now you're probably 250 to 300, maybe 350, 400. When you do the math of that, the numbers can really work based on the amount of square footage you need, how much you're paying in most markets, price per square foot, how much staff you need to fill, et cetera, et cetera. So all that to say, those are the numbers I think of with GenPop, but sports performance, again, is spikier. So I'm just wondering, do you have, when you're talking to a sports performance client of ours, do you have benchmarks you're looking for as far as like what you want to be seeing for monthly revenue? Is that the type of thing where, you know, it changes based on the season? I just be curious to hear how you think about that.
Well, we have one really dead season. So let's say a quarter of the year is just kind of barely keep our heads above water and make sure that we've got the cash flow we need to, you know,
Yeah.
stay afloat without
Pay,
digging into
pay
the
the
flush
bills.
fund.
Yep.
But for
Yep.
the rest of the year, I I look at this less in my own operation as an ARM or average revenue per member, and more as we have a kind of a loosely stated objective of having at least 60% of our clients paying for our unlimited training rate. That's kind of like that's our marker, and actually
Yep.
that figure is $449 a month. And when you actually break out our numbers, we land like almost exactly at that 320 you mentioned, which is pretty
Huh.
fascinating because you and I have not talked about that figure.
Yeah, interesting.
But that's right around where we live. I always want to have between 60 and 65% of my clients paying to be here, what
Yep.
we call 4+ days per week, because that's
Yep.
just kind of our sweet spot. And for us, I've got a lot more space than the average gym. And
Yeah, of
so
course.
capacity is not an issue for me from a square
Right.
footage, or I would say staff capability of
Right.
designing
Because you
programming.
can mostly just add more staff, right?
I
Like
can add more,
you have.
exactly. And I do a lot of seasonal staffing. We staff
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
We can offer we can offer short-term like independent contractor opportunities that
Yep.
complement the, say, the professional baseball schedule. Like I can find somebody who
Yes.
doesn't have work
Yes.
from October 10th
Yeah.
until February 10th, and I can throw good money at them, keep them busy, and not worried about loading up my payroll long term. But
Yep.
to answer your question, I think that where you have kind of mentally landed on that average revenue per member, I don't see anything wrong with that in a performance training space either. I know that
Hmm.
it's probably a little higher with like a guy like Mickey, who's charging a little bit more of a
Yeah.
premium in his space down at the annex because,
So for those not listening, Mickey is a Business Unicorns client and a coach who runs a monster business in New Jersey. Monster.
yeah,
So yeah, he probably does have a higher average revenue in, affluent New Jersey.
yeah, and he's got
Whereas you're right, in
hair
Hudson,
rent.
Mass, probably bears a lower.
Yeah, but not too far off from where you're thinking. I did want to make a point off of something that you said earlier, which is like we're chasing these active client kind of ceilings. Like we want to get as high as we can, as many as we can. And to my point earlier in the conversation about how I think you need to be niched a little bit, the reason having a niche in the sports performance space is so immensely valuable is because when you get hyper specific there, you can stop chasing more bodies and then start selling skill development against to the people who are already there. So
Yeah, that
I
makes a
don't
lot of
I
sense.
don't need to pack this like let's say I have 200 active baseball players training at my gym, and I know I could have 300, I could have 350, I could have 400, or I could just sell pitching instruction and hitting instruction to a pretty significant chunk of the 200 and not be stressed about getting more people to discover us. It's
Yeah.
it's just wonderful. The margins are great. We become sticky. We become a one-stop shop for
Mm-hmm.
them,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't need to just keep scaling the team, get bigger, 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 bigger.
Yeah.
I just sell something that complements their goals and it makes the lives of the parents easier. Come to this one place and do the three things that you're going to sign up for anyway. You might as well do them all with us. And so I wouldn't be able to do that if 25% of my clients were baseball players, 25% were basketball players, we had some hockey players.
Yeah.
Because then
Yeah.
how do I pick? What am I going to chase specifically, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it is really interesting because it's a different way of approaching. I think like one of the core principles I've just like learned again and again and become more and more hard ass about is just like less, 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 less. Because it's funny on a glance, one could, I think, interpret that to say like, oh, well, if you want to make more money, just add more services, just do like other things. And I guess that is like literally what you're saying. But I think the takeaway for listeners, really important hammer is this actually is a function of doing less, of like chasing different, less kinds of sports, which does allow you to bolt on these other services that are complementary and can make sense. And to your point, can be stickier and add better margin. So it's interesting in that like it's a parallel, but like slightly different way of getting less, or I should say, getting more out of less. Maybe if I can ask maybe one other related question to this, I guess I'm just curious, because you would know better than I do because you frankly field a lot of these calls. Do you think in most markets is it realistic in most markets for sports performance focused gyms to narrow in on one or maybe two sports and have that be sufficiently large to grow to the place where they are the person for that sport, and between that and skill development you can build a business that is pretty robust? Or, and this is a sincere question, I don't know the answer, so I'm not leading. Are there markets where that's maybe not practical, where the market just isn't dense enough? You're not a household name like Eric Cressy, and you definitely have to expand and might choose to work with different sports, potentially even to avoid some of the spikiness and have overall revenues. I'm just curious about your assessment of that, having now talked to, tons and tons of gym owners of the past several years that do sports performance.
I think that how would I put this? The The
Oh boy.
population density certainly matters. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not going to pretend I only have baseball players in my space. We cater to athletes from
Right,
all
right,
walks of
right,
life.
right,
We
right.
market to one population,
Yeah,
and
yeah, 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 yeah.
and
I
I
mean, you're like the ultimate example of like you shoot for the bullseye of like one specific kind of client, and then you find ones around them. Because I think that's another thing when we start talking about avatar, everyone's like, "But I don't want to." But I can help everyone. I don't want to turn away these other people. I could help and give me money. And we're like, we're not saying that. We're just saying target one person. Which, yeah, y'all are the kind of textbook example of
yeah,
that.
have a singular voice. I say it all the time, be it on this podcast, behind closed doors, or at our events. I say, position yourself as the best in the world at one thing, and you'll be presumed to be far better than average on all the adjacent things.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I
Well said.
can't tell you how often a dad calls and he's like, I know you're the baseball guys, but my kid plays lacrosse. Can you look at his shoulder? Of course we can. That's,
Sure.
yeah, we got this.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. But
Yep.
to your
Yep.
question, I think 1 to 2 sports, yeah, very doable, so long as you're not in a town with 4,000 people and you're
Right.
there's like 11 people from that sport playing the whole thing. You just can't build that business. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of
Yeah.
the mistakes I see is that people say, I'm going to build this business around my passion. And then they try and jam it down the throat of the local community without thinking. So, can you run my model for, say, hockey players in New England or Minnesota? Hell yes. Can you do it in Jacksonville? Nope. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
there are a fair amount of people who are kind of like, I'm so good and I'm so passionate about this that I'm going to make it work in my market. And you know what? Sometimes it just doesn't work. Like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna sell a bunch of individualized golf training in Alaska. I don't know. And
Yeah.
so the point is, it's got to be logical and you got to listen to the
Yep.
market. But beyond that, anything is doable if you don't bite off more than you can chew with your lease, as far as I'm concerned. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
don't be
Yeah.
a dumbass with the space that you acquire. You could build a hyper specific profitable business out of 1,000 square feet if you're good at the social media component and the storytelling and you are passionate enough about it to figure out who the influences are locally in your market,
Yep.
and then just go from there. And so, like, the more specific you get in these markets that aren't massive, the smaller your space needs to be, the smaller your team needs to be, and the more you got to be ready to hustle for eyeballs. But I want to tell you kind of a fascinating story, like the most interesting win I got this summer in this capacity from more of like a small business organic growth. Um, every single every kid who plays team sports in the United States works off of typically like one of two applications, I should say their parents do, on their phones. It's an application called Game Changer or Team Snap. There might be one or two others that are like spin-offs or alternatives, but basically it's where the team rosters get organized, where the schedules show up, and how parents communicate with each other, with the coaches, and how they RSVP
Mm.
for things, right? And so Game Changer is baseball. It's like Little League. Every time you go, if my wife asks me anything, like, what are we doing 2 Fridays from now? I'm just like, hang on, let me open Game Changer. That's how we live our life. It's not like, let me
Sure.
open my Google Calendar. It's let me open Game Changer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Game Changer lets you stream games. If you want to put a camera up on the
Whoa.
backstop, you can hit go live. And there are some parents who do this big, like actually put up multiple cameras, and we've got one of those dads on our team. He's just like, he loves the tech. He works in tech. He's fascinated with the cameras, the tripods, all that
Awesome.
stuff. So he puts it up, and he basically broadcasts the game and has his own little production. And he has a QR code that he 3D printed with his YouTube channel on it. And he's like, you can follow it on Game Changer, or you can go to my YouTube channel. And when other parents walk by, they inevitably are like, whoa, what is this? It's like an ESPN production. What are you doing? And he's like, oh, scan that QR code, and if you want to watch your kid pitch, you could send it to his grandparents.
Huh.
You could watch this tomorrow. You could do, you can follow up. And a lot of people will scan the QR code, like not our parents, like
Huh.
fans who are walking around the
Wow.
field, or parents of
Yeah.
the opponents. And he said to me about halfway through our summer season, he's like, I'm building an ad for you guys. I pulled it. He took a screenshot off of our CSP Instagram, which was a picture of my son Colin doing pitching instruction and his son catching it. And he just put it up on the screen that shows between innings. And there was just a picture of the kid
Oh
who,
my
like,
God.
the kid who hits all the home runs on our team is like on this picture. And what happened? I got 2 leads the next day after he did it once from the opposing team with dads who called me. They found us. We didn't even have a
Wow.
call to action in it. there wasn't like a QR code or anything. It was just our business name. And these dads searched us and they called and they were like, hey, does the kid who hit 2 home runs against us last night do hitting at your place? And I was like, oh yeah, that's funny. Yeah, he does. And he's like, all right, I want to sign my kid up for hitting. And this was because the fellow dad
Brilliant.
on my team showed me just how like hyper specific and like closed caption audience we have. Like they're just dying to consume this stuff. And
Yes.
that has turned into 4 leads in the last 10 days. People who spend real money on hitting instruction, and they're
Yeah.
12-year-olds who could, the lifetime value of those clients could be tens of thousands of
Right. Right.
dollars.
Right. Right.
And so if I wanted to start, if I had to start fresh right now without my brand, that's how I would do it. I'd go right there and I'd be like, I'm going to get the eyeballs of every one of these parents. I'll go to whoever's broadcasting this stuff. And there's like kind of a dad
Brilliant.
on, there's like a dad on every club team who does this. I'd find that guy and I'd be like, can I buy you lunch at the
Get you
snack
a special
shack?
guy. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to
I
send you
will
an image.
give you a gift card
Yeah.
to
Your
Starbucks.
kid does hit
Yeah, I love
training, trains hits for free if you put this picture I just
Perfect.
texted you up. And
Oh wow.
Mark, it's like, it's going to
Yeah.
print money for me next year. I already know we're going to run this play.
That's fantastic.
And so it's a
Love
little
it.
specific, but it shows you how you could do this in a super small market.
Yeah.
Because every market has a little league.
100%. Yeah, no, this is I think that is a highly tactical tip to end on thing here for our sports performance listeners.
Can I tell
Hey,
you?
thanks so much for,
I just
yeah.
want to give you. I made some notes before we talked, and we didn't even hit them. And I had
Oh,
3 things
oh,
that are
wow.
the
Okay.
biggest differences, and I want to tell you the
Oh,
2
yeah, yeah, yeah,
similarities
yeah.
because they matter the most.
Yeah, yeah.
The difference that people forget is in my space, the buyer isn't often the user, and by that I mean
Right, right.
I have to sell to mom and dad,
Yes.
but then I need to deliver the
Yes.
experience to Junior.
Yep.
So
Yep.
different from what you do at MFF or you did at MFF. The next one, we're typically accountable to the performance and the experience of the buyer, but there's a misconception, a disconnect with parents about how hard their kids work. Like in the parts of the time where this doesn't work in the eyes of the person who bought from us, it's like that system failed. My kid works hard, and they don't, and that's one of the places that's really troubling because we have to be at
That's gotta
peace
be
with
tough.
being like, you know what, we aren't for everybody. I'm not going to
Yeah,
go to
yeah,
war to fix this one because I can't change the kid's work ethic.
Yeah, and I assume you can't explain to the parent like, no, 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 your kid's lazy. Your kid is not particularly talented. Your kid is not genetically blessed. They're just not responding with the half-hearted effort they're putting in. Probably not a winning argument.
And you're not going to do that with or without the kid in the room. Either way, you're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to walk away from more business than you might have in
that is
Gen Pop.
interesting.
And
Yeah,
then
because it's not that you would like necessarily like win or have that argument with a Gen Pop client, but you're right. Like you're selling to the person that is also getting fulfilled on the service. So they tend to have some sense. It's not that they never blame you anyway when they were completely non-compliant, but there's at least like a tighter coupling of their awareness of their own behaviors, and you can have a different kind of conversation. Whereas, yeah, the person is buying is not the person getting fulfilled, which is interesting.
Yeah, and it's like a very different version of the client is always right. We say the client's always right, usually because it's like, go fix it. Tell them they were right and fix it. But I'm saying you're telling the parent, you know what, you're right, and we can't help you. And that's an interesting dynamic to be in.
Yeah.
The third difference, which I love about our business that would make things really hard for us if we went super Gen Pop, is that the goals for my clients are super objective. There's just like they're so clear. It is like, throw this hard by this time, make the team. Like your clients are kind of like vague. Like they want to look better in a bathing suit, but it's not quite so time bound and specific.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think in general, you're probably correct that I imagine there's probably more opportunity for any sports performance gyms to focus hard on the numbers, because numbers, you're right, give you this very objective, quantifiable result that you can take to the bank. You either did it, you didn't do it. Gen Pop, you're right. The closest equivalent is if somebody's seeking fat loss. I think for a long time, that was the game for a lot of people doing high pressure Gen Pop sales. I think understandably, a lot of people were like, this is maybe feeling sort of weird how hard we're always pushing this. Then there was maybe a little overcorrection. Everyone was like, nobody should have fat loss. And if you have fat loss, you're evil, right? And I think maybe we're getting to a more, in between and reasonable approach to this. But even if the goal is fat loss, it's not like you keep losing weight forever, amen, right? Now, I will say, with my gym in New Jersey, that is a big, important piece of how we retain and build value is using the InBody, right? outside of a physique goal, or something like an in-body that gives you some quantifiable metrics, both to celebrate results and to have something to pivot from when offering other behavior changes. When the goal is just more generally feeling better, that's hard, right? That's not quite as quantifiable. And it's funny, we did things over the years at MFF. You can do things like you can do like surveys, like, and like what percentage of your members are sleeping better, or, but it is, I think it was Eugene Schwartz, The Principles of Scientific Advertising is, I think I bastardized the name of that book, but essentially one of the best things you can do in marketing is be able to tell specific quantifiable stories. And it's one of the best things you can do in fulfillment is create specific quantifiable results. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like sports performance, I think lends itself to that in a more obvious and usable way. Whereas that's less the case with Gen Pop, right? Gen Pop, it's like, my goal is to work out. My goal is to be working out regularly. And, anybody that's had a Gen Pop sales conversation, that can be weird sometimes because you're trying to, push for some meaningful reason they want to take action. And some people, it's just, they really struggle to like, I don't know. Why do you want to work out? I don't know. I should work out. Oh, okay. Well, why do you want to work out? How's your life going to change? I don't know. I guess I'll be working out. Oh, okay. So as a final pro tip there, by the way, if that's happening to you, the way that I think about this, particularly on an intro call, you do at least 3 runs around the rosy. Then you're usually going to get them in some sort of in-person strategy session situation. And if you have not, in that initial call, broken through to get some pay dirt, some people, the first time you ask that question, they're going to gush oil and they're going to start crying. That's actually helpful in some ways because then, okay, well, I know there's like a compelling emotional reason here why they want change. And then sometimes you do a few rings around the rosy and you can't get there. It's not the end of the world, but somebody, you don't get to some deeper emotional reason why they want to embark on a finished journey. It's going to be probably a little bit harder to get that person to show up for the actual sales conversation and convert.
Yeah, so true. Okay, well, I'd struggle like hell to sell in that ambiguity.
It's a different, it's doable, but you're right. It's different animal. And Pete, it's great as always to be fitness industry Voltron with you. Our powers combined. Anything else you want to share for our listeners before we outro?
Probably that when it comes to similarities, it's just systems. That never goes out of style.
Yeah.
And I had in the note simplicity sells, which you also mentioned is one of our core values. But yeah, less price points, less products to sell that are not logical. But simple pricing, simple programming, simple gym layout, all that stuff sells. Yeah, just simplify.
Oh boy.
And so it's the same regardless of the gym you step into and the community you're serving. Simple.
Indeed. All right, friends. Well, thank you so much for listening here. So as a reminder, go to the show note. I beg of you, if you want to join us in Denver, it's going to be an awesome time. Pete and I will definitely be there. And maybe you'll get to see Pete's wife, Katie, but maybe she won't be there because she'll be at Bonnie Raitt concert. So maybe fun to see her.
Meet me at Red Rocks.
All right, friends. Thank you so much. Pete, thank you so much. We will see you next time. Goodbye.
See ya.